Welcome everyone to our channel. We're thrilled you're here to experience this adventurous journey with us. In our epic tale, the biggest thrill at the end is when our hero bravely faces down an all-powerful adversary to reclaim a precious relic, proving his worth in forging an unexpected bond with a fierce alien huntress. Wondering how that intense confrontation changes both of their destinies? You'll have to listen to the entire story to find out. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel right now to stay updated on all our latest uploads and support more exciting stories. Your subscription encourages us to bring you more tales of interstellar drama, heart-pounding action, and captivating romance. We also invite you to drop a comment below with your thoughts. Tell us your theories, favorite characters, or what you hope happens next. And be sure to let us know where you're tuning in from. Commander Dresden Marrow's escape pod tore through the upper atmosphere of an unfamiliar world, plummeting in a blaze of orange and red that painted the twilight sky. The onboard computer blared frantic warnings as the temperature in the cabin soared, and each jarring impact from swirling ion storms resonated throughout the pod's metal shell. Dresden gritted his teeth, sweat beading on his brow. Despite his status as chief security officer aboard the Earth Alliance research vessel Orlean, he had never experienced anything quite this violent. Yet here he was on a desperate, last-minute launch after ensuring the crew's safe evacuation. Wrestling the manual control stick, he aimed to reduce speed before touchdown. Shuddering beneath the strain, the pod's heat shielding threatened to fail at any moment. Alarms flashed and hissed, casting the cabin in pulses of flickering light. Overhead panels sparked intermittently, making the control console look like a glitching festival of crimson glare. "Come on, hold together," Dresden muttered through clenched teeth. He forced the nose up, hoping to land in something softer than rock. Outside the forward viewport, the once shadowed surface below now revealed an endless stretch of massive alien trees, the canopy shimmering with an unfamiliar greenish-blue hue. He thought he saw jagged peaks in the distance, hard to tell in the swirling dust and flames, but he had no choice about where to land. When the pod smashed into the thick underbrush, the jolt felt like colliding with a solid steel barrier at full speed. The entire compartment lurched, burying its tip into loose soil, then ricocheting off a cluster of boulders. Twisting in his seat restraints, Dresden braced himself, ignoring the stabbing jolt in his shoulder. The crash sequence ended with a final echoing crunch as the battered escape pod embedded itself in a small clearing surrounded by towering trees. He exhaled shakily, running a hand over his short, sweat-dampened hair. Blood trickled down his cheek from a shallow cut above his eye. Despite the turmoil, he took an immediate personal assessment. Left arm bruised, ribs sore, but nothing broken. His security training had taught him to prioritize triage. Himself first, because a dead or severely wounded officer couldn't help anyone else. "AI, status?" he demanded, voice tight. A crackle preceded the monotone reply. "Life support, critical, communications, offline. Navigation, offline. Emergency beacon, active. Heat shielding, failed. Recommend immediate egress, Commander Marrow." Dresden cursed under his breath at the partial meltdown of essential systems. If anyone from the Orlean had survived and was searching for him, that beacon was his only link to rescue. Grabbing the emergency kit strapped beneath the seat, he popped the hatch. Acrid smoke billowed out. He coughed, waving it aside. At least the planet's atmosphere seemed breathable. One less problem to handle. Outside, the world was hauntingly beautiful in its devastation. Enormous trees spiraled toward a twilight sky, their leaves glinting with subtle phosphorescence. Giant ferns and tangled vines spread along the ground, illuminated by the glow of setting suns. Apparently, this system had more than one. Dresden's instincts buzzed with heightened awareness. He was a security officer, a soldier. Never drop your guard, even in awe-inspiring landscapes. Survival might hinge on a split-second reaction. Aware that raw curiosity could be lethal, Dresden scanned the perimeter with careful eyes. The thick trees pressed in from all sides, forming a natural fence of trunks and vines. He checked the pack's contents: a water purifier, compressed rations, a heat blanket, flare beacons, a multi-tool, and thankfully, a compact energy sidearm. The sidearm was short-range but could stun or kill, depending on the setting. Satisfied, he knelt beside the battered escape pod's shell, tapping the external transmitter. The dimly blinking light suggested the emergency beacon was still broadcasting, but for how long was anyone's guess? Perhaps there was a chance the Orlean or a secondary rescue vessel might pick it up. Then again, the ion storms that had forced him to crash here might just keep any signals from escaping the planet's atmosphere. Abandoning the pod for extended exploration was risky, but so was staying put if hostile creatures lurked nearby. For now, he planned to circle the site, at least to find water or higher ground. The forest canopy shone faintly overhead with an almost ethereal shimmer, flecks of bioluminescent pollen drifting in the dying light. This alien world seemed alive with subtle energy. Dresden's steps crunched on thick leaf litter as he ventured deeper beyond the small clearing. His decades of training whispered he was never truly alone. At times he paused, turning slowly. The sensation of being watched crept over him. He tried to calm his hammering heart, holding his sidearm at a steady low ready. The crack of a branch behind him made him pivot, only to find a clump of luminous moss. Minutes bled into an hour until he caught the sparkle of running water, a swift stream weaving through roots and stones in a ravine below. Glad for the find, he jumped down carefully, testing each foothold. Kneeling by the bank, he used the purifier to filter water into his canteen. The cold, fresh taste revived him, washing away the dryness in his throat. As he drank, his senses pricked at a subtle shift in the atmosphere, a near silent ripple of motion. Then came the whistle of something slicing through the air. His muscle memory took over. In a single fluid motion, he jerked up his hand and caught the incoming arrow inches from his face. The shock of it vibrated through his arm, the arrow's tip glinting with lethal sharpness. He clutched the projectile, eyes going wide at its strange design. Its shaft was made of a slick metallic material, impossibly light yet rigid. Whipping his head around, he scanned the tree line. There, a silhouette behind a thick trunk, partially obscured by swirling leaves and dense undergrowth. "I'm not looking for a fight," Dresden called, his voice gruff but measured. "My name is Commander Dresden Marrow. My ship crashed. I'm just trying to survive." For a moment, no one appeared. Then from behind the trunk, a tall figure emerged, a slender shape with smooth snow-pale skin that shimmered in the filtered light. The alien was distinctly feminine, her posture fluid and predatory, like a huntress tracking game. Silvery white hair cascaded past her shoulders, highlighting her angular, elegant face. An expression of horror, mixed with something else he couldn't decode, flashed across her features. She pointed at the arrow still in his hand, her voice rising in melodic syllables he couldn't understand. Her gorgeous features twisted in dismay, as though he had committed some grave offense by simply not dying. Dresden slowly lowered his energy pistol, preferring not to escalate the situation. He lifted the captured arrow, carefully displaying it with open palms. "I'm sorry," he said gently, "but you fired first." The alien huntress advanced, black armor clinging to her lithe form, which accentuated her feminine yet powerful shape. Strong legs, a tapered waist, and broad shoulders built for archery. Her gaze darted between his face and the arrow, her brow creasing. Then, as if a decision had been made, she spoke again in that flowing language. Dresden only heard it as a series of musical notes, perplexing and beautiful all at once. Sensing his confusion, she gestured. First, she tapped the arrow, then placed her hand over her own chest, and finally pointed at him. She repeated the sequence, accentuating each movement, frustration tinging her melodic voice. Dresden hesitated, still clueless as to her meaning. He took in her features, ivory skin, those luminous eyes of pale, nearly translucent blue. She seemed almost mythical. She exhaled sharply in evident exasperation, then stepped closer, each stride purposeful. An undercurrent of tension crackled in the air. If she wanted to kill him, would she truly be this open, stepping into grabbing distance? When she stood near enough that he could see the faint pulse in her neck, she reached out to claim the arrow from his grasp. He let it go, meeting her stare. She repeated her name, Velexia, tapping her breastplate. Then she gave him a measuring look, as if waiting. "Commander Marrow," he tried, tapping his own chest. "Dresden." She tilted her head, repeating Dresden, with an accent that rolled the ER more than he did. Before he could react, Velexia gently clamped her fingers around his wrist, raising the arrow between them in her other hand. Her expression turned grave, perhaps even fearful. Again, she pointed to the arrow, then made a looping gesture that linked him and her. Dresden's gut tightened with apprehension. He had no idea what the gesture signified, but from her body language it was significant, perhaps irrevocably so. "Sorry, I really don't understand," he murmured. Valexia sighed, disappointment or resignation crossing her features. She released his wrist and beckoned for him to follow. Despite every instinct that told him to remain cautious, Dresden nodded. As a security officer, forging alliances was as critical a skill as combat. The fact that she hadn't yet fired another arrow was a good sign. They walked in silence, her posture stiff with what seemed to be dismay. As they left the stream behind, the forest floor became increasingly tangled, large roots and strange, multi-hued ferns forming natural obstacles. Valexia navigated them easily and Dresden kept close. His senses stayed on alert, recalling her lethal accuracy. She had nearly skewered him from stealth. Trusting her too soon might be a fatal mistake. Nevertheless, each passing moment confirmed she wanted him alive. She seemed more distressed than hostile. Looking at the alien leaves overhead, he couldn't help but wonder what deeper secrets this woman held, and what kind of society awaited him just beyond the tree line. They traveled for the better part of an hour, the dense forest gradually shifting in composition. Massive trunks gave way to slimmer, elegantly curved trees, reminiscent of willows. Bioluminescent vines dangled in lacy swaths, forming natural curtains in the gentle breeze. The forest floor rose, and soon Dresden spotted structures integrated into the canopy, platforms, walkways, and dwellings perched amid the branches. It was a breathtaking sight, an entire community woven seamlessly with nature. Word must have spread of Valexia's return because more of her kind emerged from behind trunks and platforms, all female and similarly striking in appearance. Their skin varied in subtle shades of white or pale silver, their eyes shimmering with near-translucent colors. Many wore the same style of black armor, an aesthetic blend of grace and lethality. Some of the new arrivals stared openly at Dresden, while others held up weapons defensively. Murmured whispers rose like a cresting wave, underscoring his alien presence. One figure parted the throng, a taller female with intricate markings etched into her armor. Her silver hair was elaborately braided, and she wore a regal expression that hinted at great authority. Valexia paused, clearly deferring to this elder. Valexia spoke rapidly in her language, glancing repeatedly at Dresden and the arrow in her hand. The elder listened intently, her expression shifting from curiosity to incredulity to resignation. Then she placed a cool palm on Valexia's shoulder, offering a nod that appeared both sympathetic and firm. Turning her attention to Dresden, the elder touched her forehead, then pressed her palm to his cheek. A fleeting pulse of energy coursed through him, as if static electricity were dancing across his skin. She closed her eyes, chanting in low musical tones. When she opened them again, her voice miraculously resolved into spoken English. "I am Elder Ratia of the Rayshara. Valexia has conveyed that you caught her arrow in flight. Is this true, outsider?" Dresden blinked, unsettled by the sudden comprehension. "Yes, Elder Ratia." My reflexes took over. "I meant no disrespect." A hushed wave rippled through the gathered Rayshara. Elder Ratia's face became solemn. "It is no small matter to catch a star shadow arrow, especially one fired by our leading huntress." She inclined her head toward Valexia. "You must understand, off-worlder. Among our people, to catch a huntress's arrow is to claim a bond that cannot be easily broken. By our most sacred law, you and Valexia are now fated to be joined." Dresden's gut twisted. "Joined? You mean marriage?" Elder Ratia gave a single nod. "Your word for it, yes. We call it the sacred bond. It is old, predating even our earliest recorded histories. Only a warrior of exceptional skill can catch the arrow of a huntress, and that event seals them together." Exchanging a wary look with Valexia, Dresden noticed her downcast gaze. She looked as if she would rather fade into the forest than stand there. He realized she was as uncomfortable with this bond as he was, maybe even more. "What if I refuse?" he asked, uneasy. Ratia's expression hardened. "Then you label Valexia as unworthy. This is a grave insult. Her clan would be honor-bound to avenge her. War leader Saharidin, in particular, would never let such dishonor go unanswered." Already forced into a corner, Dresden felt frustration brewing. A forced marriage or a blood feud, fantastic choices. Under Elder Rhaetia's firm command, Dresden was led deeper into the settlement. The canopy city revealed levels upon levels of living spaces carved out of enormous branches, each illuminated by glowing crystals. Rope bridges and vine walkways connected various platforms, blending artistry and practicality into one. Despite the communal bustle, a noticeable tension permeated the air. Many sets of eyes lingered on Dresden, suspicion plain in their stares. A younger Rayshara named Anira guided him to a dwelling near the outer edge, a simple room built around a hollow in a massive tree trunk. Within, he found a cot padded with soft furs, a small basin, and a few woven rugs. The dwellings had an unforced elegance, as if grown rather than constructed. He set his emergency pack aside. Wincing, he shed the top half of his uniform, revealing bruises from the crash. Carefully, he splashed water on the cuts along his arms and torso. Sleep was appealing, but unlikely with the swirl of fresh dilemmas. On Earth or among his usual missions, catching an arrow was not typically an act that triggered forced matrimony. Shortly, Elder Rhaetia arrived with Valexia in tow. The Elder's expression was poised, her voice calm. "Commander Marrow, I've temporarily conferred on you our language through a neural link. Its effect will fade by sunrise. I want to ensure you understand what is happening." Dresden dried his hands on a nearby cloth, tossing it aside. "I appreciate that. I'd prefer direct communication." Valexia stood against the wall, arms folded, exuding reluctance. Her black and silver armor had been replaced by simpler attire, a draped tunic over fitted leggings. Even without the armor, she emanated a warrior's readiness. "Then let me speak plainly," Rachel continued. "The sacred bond is absolute. The only way to break it is if you were to prove yourself unworthy in the eyes of all Rayshara. But as I said, that invites bloodshed." Dresden pinched the bridge of his nose in mounting frustration. "And if we go through with this bond," Valexia's voice cut in, musical but edged with bitterness, "then you become my mate. According to law, we must attempt to produce offspring, forging unity between you, an outsider, and my lineage." Dresden's jaw clenched. He had grown up in the Earth Alliance, which valued free will, gender equality, and personal choice in partnership. The idea of forced marriage grated against every principle he held. "I realize your traditions are deeply important to you, but both of us clearly want no part in this." Elder Rhaetia gave a mild shrug. "What we want is rarely factored into tradition, Commander. My role is to guard these rights, not question them. But there may be other influences at play." The war leader Saharidin has long expressed an interest in Valexia for political reasons. He was close to sealing a union with her, though no official vow had been made when you caught her arrow. Valexia stared at the floor, saying nothing. "And Saharidin is dangerous?" Dresden guessed. A flicker of concern crossed Rhaetia's face. "He is powerful, cunning, and uncompromising. With respect, Commander, you are an outsider. He and his supporters will not yield easily to an off-worlder claiming their prize huntress." As night fell, Dresden was escorted to a communal feast, the setting reminiscent of an ancient festival. The settlement's central clearing flickered with torchlight, revealing wooden tables arranged in concentric rings around a massive fire pit. Large cuts of local game sizzled over open flames, while fruit platters and braided loaves dotted every table. Soft music, utilizing haunting flutes and stringed instruments, drifted beneath the chatter of assembled Rayshara. Valexia and Dresden were seated at the innermost table beside Elder Rhaetia and several other elders. War leader Saharidin was notably absent until he made a dramatic entrance partway through the feast. The moment Saharidin strode into the gathering, conversation hushed. He was tall for a Rayshara male, nearly as broad-shouldered as the formidable females around him, wearing a fitted breastplate etched with swirling sigils. His silver-white hair was braided back, and his eyes glowed with acute intensity. A half-smile, somewhere between arrogant and predatory, curved his lips as he focused on Dresden. "Elder Rhaetia," he said, dipping his head. Then he turned that piercing stare on Valexia. "I have heard rumors of a bond formed under questionable circumstances." "It was no rumor," Rhaetia replied evenly. "Commander Marrow caught the arrow of our first huntress. The law is clear." A muscle in Saharidin's jaw twitched. "That law is meant for Rayshara warriors, not random aliens who crash onto our soil." Valexia was promised to me and I to her. We had spoken of uniting our lineages for the betterment of all clans. Dresden raised an eyebrow. She doesn't seem too pleased about that. The war leader's gaze snapped to him. Be silent. You do not understand our ways. You do not know what is best for her or for our people. Several of the elders exchanged wary glances. Saridin took a deep breath, then straightened, addressing them all. I invoke the right of challenge. Gasps and murmurs ran through the entire clearing. Valexia's expression remained impassive but tensed. Dresden directed his question to the elders. What is this right of challenge? Raytaya steepled her fingers. It is an ancient custom that allows a rival claimant to challenge the rightful bond. The two must face 3 trials: skill, strength, and cunning. If you refuse, the bond is forfeit, and you'll be exiled, dooming yourself in these wild lands. If you accept and lose, you die in the challenge. Should you somehow win, the bond is indisputable. Saridin's half-smile grew sharper. It will be settled on the morrow. At midday, we begin with the first trial. Drazan, stuck between an undesirable marriage and lethal combat, felt cornered. Saridin was, by all accounts, the mightiest champion among the Rey Shara. If Dresden accepted, he risked certain defeat. But if he refused, he would be exiled and possibly hunted. He inhaled quietly, glancing at Valexia. Her gaze flickered to him, a flicker of sorrow or remorse in her eyes. He could guess that she found neither prospect appealing. Forced to marry a man she barely knew, or watch him be slaughtered by Saridin. All right, Drazan said, forcing conviction into his voice. I accept your challenge. The declaration unleashed a swirl of commotion. Nearby onlookers craned to glimpse the alien offworlder who dared stand against Saridin. Others seemed intrigued, perhaps even quietly impressed by Dresden's composure. Saridin's grin was disconcertingly confident as he gave a formal bow, then pivoted and strode away, flanked by a trio of clan warriors. Elder Raytia stood, signaling a hush. By dawn, the place of trial shall be prepared. Let all clans bear witness at midday to the right of challenge. She gave Drazan a pointed look, then Valexia, and spoke to them both. Feast and rest. The trials demand every scrap of your endurance. Valexia rose, her posture taut, and left without a word. Dresden lingered only long enough to push some roasted game around his plate. His appetite had vanished, replaced by a sense of foreboding. Eventually he excused himself, slipping away from the circle. He found Valexia outside the feasting area, standing near a torchlit walkway that stretched across a wide ravine. She stared at the swirling mist below, silent. For a long moment, neither spoke. Finally she said, You should not have accepted. Dresden shrugged. Did I have a better choice? Her pale eyes, reflecting the flame light, flicked to him. Saridin is the war leader of the Glory Spark clan. He's undefeated in personal combat and well-versed in our rituals. You're either brave or foolish to challenge him. Possibly both, he conceded. But I'm guessing you don't wish to be forced into a union with him either, or it wouldn't bother you this much. Care to give me any advice on how to defeat him? Her lips thinned at that. She turned back to the swirling darkness. First, you must know that the 3 trials are separate. The first, marksmanship. The second, raw strength. The third, cunning. Saridin excels in all 3. He leads hunts, trains recruits, and has overshadowed every competitor in living memory. A thought struck Dresden. You're the first huntress. Why isn't he intimidated by your skill? You outrank him in some sense, don't you? She glanced at him sharply. Among the Rey Shara, females typically hold greater physical prowess, but Saridin is unique. He is strong for a male, cunning beyond measure, and will not let archaic gender norms stand in his path to power. Because of this, many revere him, others fear him. He might fight dirty, Dresden guessed. He will do what is necessary, Valexia corrected. The line between strategy and honor is thin for him. He let out a slow breath. Do you want me to succeed? Valexia closed her eyes. I do not want this bond forced upon us. But if you lose, Saridin's path is clear. The clans will unify behind him, and tradition will tighten its grip. Dresden saw the glint of vulnerability behind her stoic mask. I'll do everything in my power not to lose, he said softly. And maybe, if I manage to survive, we can figure out a better arrangement that doesn't end in tragedy for either of us. She didn't reply for a moment. Then her posture straightened, as though the brief glimpse of her inner turmoil vanished. "We'll see, Commander Marrow. You had best rest. The first trial begins soon." His lodging felt strangely quiet when Dresden returned, dark, save for a faint glow from crystal sconces embedded in the walls. He paced for a while, tension creeping through his muscles. A duel of sorts. 3 trials. No real exit strategy. Eventually, exhaustion from the day's crises set in. He dropped onto the cot, letting his eyes fall shut. In uneasy dreams, he relived the crash. The arrow caught in midair. A scowling Sahridin, and Valexia's luminous eyes wavering between dismay and empathy. Dawn arrived with the resonant calls of strange winged creatures echoing across the canopy. Dresden stretched and got a quick wash from the basin. When he stepped outside, he found an older Rayshara female waiting. She introduced herself in halting English as Elder Janira, the settlement's keeper of histories. Apparently, the neural link that Raiatea had granted was worn off, but Janira had a rudimentary capacity to speak his language. "We go," she said with a warm but nervous smile. "Trial soon." She led him to a wide clearing beyond the main settlement. Hundreds of Rayshara had already gathered, forming a loose circle around an area marked by tall, intricately carved posts. At the far side, a series of targets had been set up at different distances. Saridin stood nearby, arms crossed, 2 bows laid on a bench at his side. Elder Raytea's voice, carried via a small amplifier, reached the crowd. "We begin with the trial of skill in marksmanship. Both contestants shall use the same type of bow with identical arrows. 3 shots each. Let the best marksman prevail." A hush settled. Valexia, wearing formal huntress garb, appeared to oversee the arrangement of the targets. One was a large, circular disc at moderate range, another a smaller disc placed much farther away, and the final target, a tiny ball suspended and swinging on a rope. Saradin stepped up first, bow in hand. His first shot sunk near the center of the moderate-range target. Applause and approval rippled through the crowd. His second arrow found the smaller disc, though not quite center. Then came the swinging target. He drew the bowstring back, and despite the small arc of the moving ball, he nailed it slightly off-center. The crowd cheered in appreciation, some nodding at each other as if to say, "Of course, he's nearly perfect." Then it was Dresden's turn. He tried to remember the basic archery training from his early academy days. Approaching the line, he tested the bowstring's tension and exhaled. His first shot flew cleanly and thudded near center. A good start. He adjusted for the second, mindful of wind or any subtle drift. The arrow soared true, landing even closer to the bullseye than Saridin's. The crowd murmured in surprise, some eyes going wide. For the swinging target, Dresden steadied his breath, waiting for the perfect alignment. When he loosed the arrow, it grazed the ball's edge, causing it to spin wildly but not striking fully on center. He grimaced, the crowd echoing with an assortment of applause and dismay. When all was tallied, Dresden's overall precision nudged just ahead of Saharidin's, if narrowly. The war leader looked stunned, while various elders conferred with each other. Finally, they announced Dresden the victor for the first trial. Saridin's nostrils flared, a muscle in his jaw clenched. A wave of conversation swept the crowd, perplexed by how a mere off-worlder had bested their war leader in archery. Next, the clearing was rearranged for the trial of strength. Several Rayshara laborers rolled a gargantuan stone cylinder into the center, using levers and straining muscles. Dresden's eyes widened at the sight of it, easily 8 feet tall and thick around. Elder Raytea declared that both competitors must move this stone of ancestors from the center of the ring to an outer boundary line, a formidable challenge requiring raw power and endurance. Saridin squared up first, bracing his shoulder into the stone. With a sharp exhale, he heaved. The stone grudgingly shifted, leaving twin furrows in the earth. Impressed nods followed from the onlookers. Step by step, push by push, the war leader advanced the massive cylinder. When he reached the boundary, his chest glistened with sweat, face etched with effort, but also satisfaction at having completed the feat. He crossed his arms, glancing at Dresden with the faintest smirk, as if to say, "Try that, off-worlder." Dresden took a calming breath. He knew he lacked the raw muscle power Saridin possessed. Instead, he had to rely on ingenuity. He recalled a survival tactic from ancient Earth tribes, using logs as rollers. Searching the perimeter, he quickly gathered thick, fallen branches. Splitting them with a borrowed blade and setting them beneath the massive stone, he created a makeshift track. His next step was to gather small stones, layering them to reduce friction. The crowd watched, puzzled, as he spent crucial minutes preparing. Saradin looked on, arms still folded, an amused scowl hinting that Dresden's approach was a waste of time. But once Dresden pushed, the stone cylinder began to roll atop the branches. It still required tremendous effort, veins popping in his arms, but momentum worked in his favor. Where Saradin had simply forced it across the ground with raw might, Dresden harnessed a primitive engineering solution to minimize friction. The crowd gasped as the boulder neared the boundary line. Saradin's earlier assumption that Dresden would fail on strength alone was proven wrong. With a final grunt, Dresden rolled the cylinder over the threshold. Once again, the ring of watchers erupted in shocked murmurs. 2 trials down, and Dresden had bested Saradin both times. A hush of disbelief rippled through the assembly. Some seemed torn between tradition. Saradin was renowned, and astonishment that a foreigner might be actually worthy of their revered first huntress. Saradin's eyes blazed. Dresden could almost feel the man's fury. Saradin's supporters huddled around him, speaking in low, urgent tones. Meanwhile, Elder Raetia's voice echoed, "We pause until sunset, then the final trial shall be the trial of cunning. Should Commander Marrow prevail, the sacred bond stands unchallenged. Should Saradin triumph, he may yet claim the right to Velexia." Following the announcement, Velexia approached Dresden. She stared at the stone track he'd constructed. "You found a weakness," she said quietly, the neural link from last night gone, but she grasped enough basic Earth standard to communicate. "A cunning approach." "It's not over yet," he cautioned. "Saradin is going to be more desperate now." She nodded. "Be cautious in the labyrinth." At sunset, the onlookers reconvened before a massive edifice. The structure resembled an ancient temple carved from basalt, covered in swirling glyphs that pulsed with eerie phosphorescence. Twin entrances stood at opposite ends, each framed by monolithic archways. On the highest ledge, Elder Raetia, flanked by several elders, faced the crowd. "Within this labyrinth, the heart of Tenera awaits," Raetia proclaimed, gesturing to the temple. "Whoever retrieves it and returns here shall claim victory in the trial of cunning." Dresden and Saradin each received a small resonant stone glowing faintly on a chain around their necks. "The heart of Tenera will respond to these stones, becoming warmer as you near it," an elder explained. "Use that to guide your path." The watchers parted, and the 2 competitors moved to their designated entrances. Beneath the gathering starlight, the temple's carvings seemed to shift and writhe like living tendrils. Dresden felt a chill at the base of his spine. A horn sounded, and both men stepped into the darkness. The temperature dropped noticeably. Glowing glyphs dotted the interior walls, but they provided only pale, intermittent light. Dresden advanced carefully, noticing corridors splitting left and right in a dizzying pattern. Recalling that the labyrinth had a history used for sacred ceremonies, he suspected it might also harbor traps, or guardians. He thought back to Valexia's subtle warning about predators. For a moment, he pictured the possibility of monstrous creatures lurking in the gloom. Shortly into his journey, he encountered a large chamber with branching corridors. He decided to leave small marks on the walls with a piece of chalk he'd brought, hoping to avoid going in circles. The resonance stone remained lukewarm, providing no immediate hint that he was near the heart. A sudden noise, skittering claws on stone, made him freeze. Dresden pressed himself behind a shattered column, scanning the dimly lit corridor. The creature that emerged was nightmarish. Low-slung, covered in thick chitinous plates, it had 6 clawed limbs and no visible eyes. Instead, a ring of undulating tendrils spread from a maw, dotted with needle-like teeth. He recognized the description from Valexia's hushed comments. A shadow crawler, lethal subterranean predators that relied on sensing vibrations and heat. If Saradin had intended sabotage, perhaps these beasts were deliberately let in or awakened. With slow, measured steps, he inched back, trying not to make noise. The shadow crawler swung its head, as though scanning the air for signs of a living presence. Dresden controlled his breathing, staying as still as possible. Eventually, it continued down an adjacent corridor. He exhaled. Cunning, he reminded himself. This was no mere foot race to the treasure. It was a test of survival under dire conditions. Wiping sweat from his palms, He pressed onward, eyes peeled for movement. A flicker of pale light drew him to down another hall, where the glyphs glowed in elaborate patterns. The resonant stone heated slightly. Encouraged, Dresden followed the path carefully, hearing scuffles in the distance that might be Sahuagin or other shadow crawlers. The corridors twisted in a labyrinthine puzzle, forcing him to backtrack multiple times. At length, Dresden reached a small chamber ringed with ornate statues. Female Ray Shara depicted in dynamic poses, each holding or drawing a bow. In the center hovered a crystal of shimmering brilliance, no bigger than his fist, suspended above a stone pedestal. A faint beam of teal light emanated from an aperture in the ceiling, illuminating what had to be the heart of Tanara. As he approached, the resonant stone on his neck became almost uncomfortably hot. This had to be it. The question was, where was Sahuagin, and how would Dresden retrieve the heart without triggering something lethal? He circled the pedestal, noticing intricate runes carved into its base. The glow from the heart pulsated in waves, revealing an otherworldly intricacy, as though the crystal itself lived and breathed. His heart pounded. If he grabbed it, would he unleash a trap? A soft footstep behind him. Dresden spun, sidearm raised, only to see Sahuagin stepping from the shadows. The male Ray Shara's eyes blazed with triumph. He already had a black blade drawn. "Well done," Sahuagin said, voice echoing in the hollow chamber. His basic Earth standard was limited but comprehensible. "But you made it so far only to deliver me the prize." Dresden tightened his jaw. "You're quick with threats, but remember, I've bested you twice already." Sahuagin sneered. "Because you had luck. My skill surpasses you, alien." He inched toward the hovering crystal. "Now stand aside. I will claim the heart, in Valexia." In a heartbeat, Sahuagin lunged. Dresden sidestepped, but the war leader lashed out with his blade. Sparks flew as Dresden parried with the sidearm's metal casing. The blow nearly jarred the weapon from his hand, pain radiating up his wrist. Their footsteps echoed, each man circling the pedestal like wolves around a kill. Dresden recognized that Sahuagin was stronger and highly trained. The war leader unleashed a barrage of slashes, each meticulously aimed. Dresden dodged or deflected them, but it was only a matter of time before one slipped through. Despite his urgency, Dresden realized that if Sahuagin put all his focus on eliminating him, the man might be leaving himself open to something else. Out of the corner of his eye, a shape slithered near the chamber entrance, a shadow crawler. The monstrous predator must have followed the vibrations of their fight, drawn by the noise. Spotting it, Sahuagin's expression changed from fury to alarm. He pivoted to slash at the beast, but it sprang forward with a horrifying screech, jaws snapping. Dresden took the opportunity to seize the heart of Tanara from the pedestal. The crystal radiated intense warmth, sending tingling energy through his arms. Sahuagin bellowed, shoving the shadow crawler aside in a remarkable display of brute force. Blood stained his armor from the creature's claws. He turned back to see the shimmering heart in Dresden's hands, eyes wild with disbelief. "You think you can escape with that?" he spat. "Neither of us will leave if the shadow crawlers tear us to shreds." Dresden held the crystal close. "Then let's not fight each other. If you want to claim the heart, you'll have to take it from me. But we can handle these monsters first. Or do you prefer to die here?" A feral snarl from the shadow crawler forced them both to dodge. Another crawler joined the fray, scuttling across the wall. Sahuagin briefly met Dresden's gaze, in an unspoken truce for the moment. They might be rivals, but they needed to survive. The two spread out, flanking the first shadow crawler. Sahuagin struck with a flurry of slashes, forcing the creature to rear back, while Dresden aimed his sidearm and fired an energy pulse. The bolt struck the crawler's plated side, but it only staggered it momentarily. The second crawler hissed from behind, advancing on Dresden. He pivoted, firing again, but the chamber's partial darkness made it tough to target vital points. The creature sensed movement and heat, lashing out with spined forelimbs that clicked ominously. One savage swipe caught Dresden's forearm, slicing through his uniform and drawing blood. He clenched his jaw against the pain, focusing on controlling his panic. Meanwhile, Sahuagin proved he was no mere braggart. With agile footwork, he timed his attacks with precision, hacking deep into the first crawler's abdomen. A blackish fluid sprayed, and the creature collapsed with a final rattling hiss. Sahuagin stepped away, panting, then spun to help with the second crawler. Dresden took aim, ignoring the burning slash on his arm. His energy pistol glowed, the barrel humming, then unleashed a concentrated beam. The second crawler shrieked, flailing. Saradin seized the chance to land a final decapitating strike with his blade. The creature's twitching husk sprawled across the temple floor. For a moment, silence reigned except for their ragged breathing. The phosphorescent glyphs flickered, painting the chamber in ghostly patterns. Dresden clutched the heart of Tanara, hearing a faint pulsing from the crystal, as if it resonated with his heartbeat. Then Saharidin lifted his blade again, eyes locked on Dresden. "You have it," he said between heaving breaths, "but you can't keep it. Not from me." He lunged. Dresden barely evaded, stumbling near a statue. The war leader pressed the attack, forcing Dresden to block with his pistol and forearm. Pain flared again. Dresden realized that Saharidin was still dangerously capable, even injured and exhausted. But maybe that's his weakness, his pride. Snapping a kick, Dresden created space, holding up the heart. Your traditions revolve around worthiness. If the heart is only to be retrieved by the one who truly deserves it, maybe you should notice it didn't burn my hand. Saharidin glowered, flicking blood from his blade. Your human rationalizations are meaningless. The rite of challenge is about claiming victory, not metaphysics. You know that's not entirely true, Dresden shot back, stepping around the pedestal. Your people hold the heart in reverence, believing it chooses who is worthy. Look how it glows in my hand. I don't see it rejecting me. That gave Saharidin pause, anger and confusion warring across his features. He launched forward again, swinging his blade. Dresden parried, every muscle screaming for relief. The blow deflected off the pistol's casing, sending vibrations through his arm. At the same time, the heart flared in brightness. A shockwave of subtle energy rolled through the chamber. Saharidin was knocked back into a statue, nearly losing his footing. Dresden staggered but kept the heart clutched to his chest. This crystal does contain some inherent power. Snarling in frustration, the war leader stepped back, assessing. Dresden used that second to dart down a corridor leading out. He was battered and bleeding, but he had the heart. If he could survive the labyrinth, the right was his. Navigating the temple's winding passages with the heart in hand, Dresden tried to retrace his chalk marks. The resonance stone around his neck still pulsed warmth, but it felt overshadowed by the crystal's own glow. More skittering in the distance hinted that at least one more shadow crawler prowled nearby. He forced himself to maintain a disciplined pace, even though adrenaline urged him to sprint blindly. After rounding a corner, he almost stumbled into a cluster of bones, older remains of Rei Shara warriors who had failed some ancient challenge. A chill swept him. He pressed on, determined not to share their fate. A faint draft hinted at a way out. He followed it, eventually spotting starlight filtering through an opening. Clambering up a crumbling staircase, he emerged onto a broad terrace high up on the temple's exterior. Hundreds of feet below, the crowd had gathered, lanterns twinkling in the night like miniature constellations. Gasps and excited cheers broke out as they saw him holding the heart of Tanara. He carefully descended the stone steps that spiraled around the temple's perimeter, each step a precarious slip risk. The crowd parted, forming a wide path that led to Elder Rayetia's elevated platform. Lamps revealed Valexia standing there, arms tense at her sides. Her eyes gleamed with relief, hope. By the time Dresden reached the ground, his entire body felt shaky with exhaustion. But the heart glowed resplendently in his grasp. He approached Elder Rayetia, who solemnly lifted her hands to accept it. As soon as he placed the crystal in her palms, the elders converged in reverent wonder. "The rite is concluded," Rachel declared, her voice strong but laced with awe. "Commander Dresden Marrow has secured the heart of Tanara. By every measure, he has proven worthy beyond doubt." A tumultuous reaction erupted. Some watchers cheered, excited by the prospect of new possibilities. Others looked uneasy or dismayed, especially the supporters of Saharidin. Just then a figure limped from the temple's shadows. Saharidin, bloodied but alive, one shoulder gashed deeply. He staggered toward the dais, his expression twisted with barely contained rage. "You want this off-worlder to stand above me?" he demanded, addressing the entire crowd. He used cunning and chance, not honorable might. Our tradition is tarnished by such trickery. Elder Rayetia's gaze was sympathetic but unyielding. The right was upheld. You invoked it yourself, war leader Saharidin. Commander Marrow triumphed in all three trials. Saridin let out a raw, anguished yell, lashing out at a wooden post, splintering it. Then let the traditions crumble. If the clans will not stand for truth, I... That's enough, Valexia cut in, stepping forward. Her voice rang clear. Saridin, you talk of truth, but we all know how far you will go to ensure your advantage. We are not blind to your manipulations or your thirst for power. A flurry of shocked murmurs rippled through the crowd. Saridin glared at her, chest heaving. Then he sneered. You choose an alien over me? A war leader who has served the clan loyally? I choose, she said, picking her words carefully, not to marry a male who prizes only conquest and intimidation. If the sacred bond must exist, then I would rather it be with one who demonstrates cunning, compassion, and the capacity to adapt. The right has spoken. Sardin's supporters helped him limp away, their expressions caught between disappointment and fear at his outburst. The tension in the clearing eased as Elder Raytia signaled that the challenge was resolved. Some of the onlookers rushed forward, curiosity brimming to see the off-worlder who had just toppled the mighty Saharidin in the right of challenge. Dresden nearly collapsed, exhaustion gripping every muscle. Valexia moved to his side, offering an arm to steady him. You fought well, she murmured, her stoic facade cracking just enough to show genuine relief. He nodded, forcing a weary smile. I appreciate your warnings. You gave me the insights I needed. Elder Raytia approached, still holding the glowing heart. Commander Marrow, your trials have proven you worthy of the sacred bond with Valexia. By our law, your union is... Suddenly, a new burst of commotion scattered the crowd. A series of bright lights streaked across the sky overhead, accompanied by an unfamiliar hum. Then came a low roar that reverberated through the clearing. From behind the tree line, a sleek starship descended, engines flaring softly, landing gear deploying in a swirl of kicked-up dust and leaves. Dresden's heart jumped. Earth Alliance markings shone faintly on the hull. Could it be a rescue vessel? The Orlion's emergency protocols might have guided some other survivors here, or a dedicated search and rescue unit. Rayshara warriors bristled defensively, some knocking arrows or leveling spears. But the starship door hissed open, revealing a couple of uniformed humans and an avian humanoid crew member. One of them spotted Dresden and shouted, Commander Marrow, over here! He recognized Lieutenant Ivar from the Orlion, stumbling out with relief flooding his face. Commander, we tracked the emergency beacon to this location. Thank the stars we found you. Are you injured? Dresden let out a deep breath, stepping forward. I've had better days, he admitted. The raw wounds in his arm and across his back flared painfully, but seeing a familiar face buoyed his spirits. The rest of the crew? Any news? Ivar nodded. We recovered several pods, but we're missing a few. We'll keep searching. For now, we're here to get you to safety. At that, Valexia stepped up, her posture still erect as a huntress, but her eyes flicking with doubt or fear. You can leave, she said softly, though not in perfect English. Go home. This was always your goal, wasn't it? Dresden glanced at her, then at the new arrivals, and exhaled. I'm not sure what my choice is now. I have obligations here. One of the Earth Alliance officers looked confused, scanning the circle of Rayshara with bows and blades. Obligations? Elder Raytia's voice cut in, addressing the new arrivals in broken Earth standard, presumably gleaned from the partial link or quick tutoring. Commander Marrow is bound to Valexia by sacred law. He has bested all challenges. Their union is recognized among our people. Ivar gaped, clearly trying to process that. Commander, is this some forced arrangement? Drazan's expression was complicated. It's more nuanced than that. Their customs are deeply important, and it's not just forced. But yes, it's complicated, and I gave them my word I'd respect their traditions. A hush descended, as if every soul in the clearing understood this was a pivotal crossroads. Light from the newly arrived starship cast shifting patterns across the ancient Rayshara settlement. Valexia's luminous eyes found Dresden's, filled with uncertainty and curiosity in equal measure. You are free to go if you choose, she said quietly, switching to her mother tongue. Then, remembering he might not understand, she carefully repeated it in halting basic. You free, if you want. And then it struck him how far they had come in a matter of days. She had tried to kill him initially, then discovered she was bound to him by sacred tradition. Now she stood there offering him an out, despite the personal disgrace it could bring her. He glanced toward Ivar and the other Earth Alliance crew. They were beckoning him to board the rescue vessel, presumably to rejoin the search for the Orlean survivors. This was his chance to reclaim his life. Yet, he turned to Elder Raytia, whose age-line features were tinged with empathy. "Elder, must our bond require me to stay behind permanently? There's a galaxy out there. Surely there are ways your people and mine can communicate, learn from one another, forge alliances that help both sides." Raytia cradled the heart of Tenera, its glow reflecting in her pale eyes. "Commander Marrow, that remains to be seen. Our laws state that if the bond is formed, it must be honored. Yet we are not so rigid that we cannot adapt. Times change. The Rite has proven that." Valexia's stare was steady. "What I want, if it matters, is to choose my own path, whether that path is with you or not. But our tradition demands that we at least attempt to unify under this bond. Saradin's defeat leaves a vacuum in certain clan politics, and if we ignore the bond, the ramifications could be severe. The Star Shadow clan would be deemed dishonored. I would be exiled, and Saradin's faction might seize control again." Drazan opened his mouth, then closed it, uncertain. He could sense her frustration at a life shaped by obligations and archaic laws. Yet she was also a proud huntress, fiercely loyal to her people. He owed her at least an honest effort, having accepted the trials. The swirling hush around them continued. Neither group spoke, each side waiting for him to tip the scales. Then, step by step, he moved closer to Valexia, ignoring the stinging pain in his wounds. She held her breath, clearly steeling herself for his decision. He gently took her hand, feeling the coolness of her skin. "Valexia," he said softly, "I'm not someone who wants to trap you in a forced situation, but you and I have earned something here. Respect, maybe even the beginnings of trust. If you're willing, we can see where this goes. With the Earth Alliance, we can establish formal ties, open communication with the Rey Shara. No more forced secrecy or archaic misunderstandings. I want to help your people if they wish, and you can see if there's a place for your hunting talents among the stars. No more isolation." She breathed out slowly, an emotional swirl clouding her normally fierce gaze. "I do not wish to be caged," she whispered, voice trembling. "Not by tradition, not by anything." He nodded. "Nor do I. So maybe, just maybe, we break that cage open together, honoring what's good in your traditions while discarding what strangles your freedom." Elder Raytia observed them for a long beat, then nodded solemnly. "You have both proven a willingness to challenge that which has grown stagnant. The heart glows for you, Commander Marrow, if you can guide us to a new era of exchange with your alliance. Perhaps that is the destiny the goddess intended." He turned to the Earth Alliance officers, meeting their bewildered yet hopeful expressions. "Lieutenant Ivar, let's open a dialogue. Your primary mission is to find the rest of the Orlean crew, but after that, bring an ambassadorial team here. We have a cultural alliance to build." As if in response to that vow, a soft hush fell over the clearing, punctuated only by the quiet hum of the rescue vessel's engines. The onlookers, Rey Shara and humans alike, seemed to realize that something truly historic had just been set in motion. Valexia squeezed Dresden's hand, tentative but certain enough to convey a sense of acceptance. Together, they turned to face both the Earth Alliance Rescue Party and Elder Rayetia's council, ready to begin crafting a path that was neither purely tradition nor pure individuality, but a melding of both. High above, the starlit sky enveloped them all in its vast tapestry. The arrow that had nearly ended Dresden's life had ironically bound him to this proud, mysterious woman. Perhaps that was fate or cosmic irony or a sign of a future none of them had anticipated. One thing was sure. From the single moment he caught her arrow in mid-flight, the fate of two worlds changed forever. In the final scenes, tensions explode as ancient traditions clash with new possibilities. The breathtaking battle inside the labyrinth reveals not only the true power of our hero's determination, but also his unbreakable vow to protect those he has come to care for. Meanwhile, our huntress stands at a crossroads, torn between her people's long-held beliefs and the spark of hope ignited by an unlikely partnership. Will these two souls fully unite to face whatever the future holds? Or will the weight of centuries-old laws pull them apart? Subscribe to our channel so you don't miss the heart-racing resolution of this tale or future stories of epic heroes and their daring feats. We love hearing your opinions, so be sure to share your thoughts in the comments section. Join us in celebrating courageous characters, intense battles, and the magic that happens when different worlds collide.